Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and this is the card that I chose to do for World Card Making Day. I'm leading the mystery craft along, which I don't normally do. Normally I invite somebody else to design and choose what we are going to make, and then I like to just follow along with everybody else who's watching. But for World Card Making Day, I thought that I would go ahead and lead it. And I am filming this before World Card Making Day because I don't want to spoil the surprise, not even for one person to test my instructions. So whenever I lead MCA, what I do is I think about what I'm going to make, I get it all down on paper, and I write out all of the dimensions, I write out all of the step-by-step clues, and make the whole presentation. If you've ever followed along with Mystery Craft Along, you know that we have a slide template. I do all of that. And then when I go to make it, and this is my very first time making this card, I read all of my instructions and I follow it step by step. And that's how I test my own MCA, Mystery Craft Along. And so I chose this because I first saw it from Sam Calcott, and I'm a big fan of Made to Surprise and Sam Calcott. I think she actually originally saw it from somebody else. It was a requested card that came in from one of her viewers, and she actually now has die sets that help you create this really easily for 5x7 or a 6x6. I'm going to make an A2 size of the hidden message card, and here's the big kick that I'm just amusing myself as I think about how this is going to play out on World Card Making Day. Okay, so this card, if you've made cards before, you know what this is looking like right now is a gatefold. And so my plan on World Card Making Day is I'm gonna kind of play up the whole, well, I want to make sure that we finish on time, because if one show goes late, then it makes the next one late, and then it's just a cascading effect. So I'm gonna keep this MCA really simple, and hopefully you'll still have fun. And then I'm gonna do basically what you see me doing now, which is to create a gatefold. And then I'm going to have that slide that normally is the last slide that you see, where we reveal what it is we've just made. And so my big reveal is going to be, congratulations, you just made a gatefold card with a belly band. But lo and behold, there's going to be more to it. So I thought this would be really fun because it kind of shows everybody, how you could take a card, a basic card that you probably already know how to make, a gatefold card, and then turn it into something really spectacular and cool. If you've never made a gatefold card, though, what you want to start off with is a card base that is 8.5 wide by 5.5 tall. I would recommend something in the 100-pound cover weight, and you want to score that at 2 1/8 along the 8.5-inch edge, rotate that 180 degrees, and then score it at 2 1/8. So you're basically scoring 2 1/8 from both ends along that 8.5-inch edge. And then I cut 4 pieces of pattern paper to 1 7/8 by 5 1/4, and I glued those pattern papers 1 7/8 by 5 1/4 to the 2 front panels of the gate, and then the 2 inside panels of those gates. Then for the belly band, I cut that out of 65-pound paper. I like for it to be a little bit softer because I like to make my belly band with a soft bend. I just wrap it around my folded card. Loose, not super loosely, but kind of loosely. I don't want it to be super tight because I know that there's going to be more pattern paper added to this. So that piece has been cut to 8.5 by 1.5 tall, 8.5 wide by 1.5 tall. And then across the front, I glued a bit of pattern paper that was cut to 4 inches wide by 1 1/4 tall, but that still leaves a visible gap because of that loose fold. Now this started at 8.5, which is the same size as a card base started. But that's why I just choose some large ephemera. This was like a square, I think, left over from one of my Easy Wonder die cuts. And so if your ephemera is big enough, then it'll just cover that gap and then it'll look completely seamless front and back. So that's our gatefold with our belly band. Now, to turn this into a hidden message card, you want to score this in half at 4 1/4, and then you want to mountain fold that so that you get this M or W, however you like to look at it. So you want to score along that 8.5-inch edge at 4 1/4. Now I'm making tick marks 1 3/4 of an inch down from the top, and then 1 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. The other way that you could do this is you can line that 8.5-inch edge. You want to actually turn it so that your 5.5-inch edge is at the top, and then line this up at 1 3/4 of an inch, and then drop your blade in at the first score line where your gate is. Cut all the way to your third score line where the other gate is. So you've got a slit going all the way across that white portion in the center there. Okay, now that you've done that, then you want to cut yourself. Now this is where the magic happens. So I'm going to slow the video down to real time. So in my instructions, just to kind of throw people off in terms of what it was we were making, I put in the instructions to cut a piece at 4 1/8 wide by 5.5 tall out of 100-pound cover weight cardstock. 4 1/8 wide by 5.5 tall. But the reality is that you need to cut this in half. So what you actually need is two pieces that are each 2 1/16 of an inch wide by 5.5 tall. Why is it 2 1/16 of an inch? Well, these two strips of solid color cardstock will get woven through the slits that we just made. And that section, that white section between the two score lines, is about 4 1/4 of an inch, but look at all of the folds and all of the score lines, they take up space. So you can't cut a piece that's 2 1/8 and then another piece that's 2 1/8. That equals exactly 4 1/4. And in order to have a really nice fold so that this bends and folds nicely, you need these strips to be slightly smaller. Now, when you're weaving it, you need to interlock these so that they're kind of opposite. So on the left side, I go over, under, then over. And then on the right side, I do the opposite. I go under the strip, over the middle strip, under the bottom, so that it looks like this. You kind of have that checkerboard pattern. And that's the key to the hidden message card. That's essentially the foundation of your hidden message card. And it's as easy as that. So the fun part of this is in all of the spaces and the ways that you can decorate this, because there are so many ways to kind of open it and configure it so that you have a lot of different unique layouts, and it just depends on where you open it, how you fold it. So to decorate, and I'm glad that I did test my own MCA because some of these dimensions were off, but essentially here's what it comes down to. What you want is, if you're just looking at that middle section where we took the green solid color cardstock and we wove that through, if you look at just one column, the top and the bottom rows are the same size, the same dimensions, and they measure one, in terms of the pattern paper, 1 7/8 of an inch wide by 1.5 tall. So for each column that you want to decorate, And you don't necessarily have to decorate every single one, but for each column that you decorate, that top row, though that rectangle, the pattern paper measures 1 7/8 by 1.5 tall, 1 7/8 wide by 1.5 tall. And then the middle block in each column is also 1 7/8 inch wide, but it is 1 3/4 of an inch tall. It's 1/4 of an inch taller than the block on top of it and the block below it. And so you can cut that as many times out of pattern paper as you plan to use. And it's actually quite nice, and you'll see I'll kind of show all of the variations and all of the different folds that you can configure. But those are the sizes of the pattern paper, which I didn't originally actually get correct when I was just writing this out, but didn't actually make it. Because as I said, this is actually the first time I'm making it, is to test my instructions. And that's kind of how I approach my cards. I just sort of loosely think about what I want to do, and in the case of MCA, since I had to write out instructions, I wrote them out, but I don't necessarily start making it until I conceptually have the idea of what I want to make, and then I'll just figure it out as I go. But in this case, I did actually write everything down, but I'm still sort of figuring things out as I go, and that's why it's taking me a while to really get the mats and layers to the size that I want on here. But in this first sort of layout, I guess, I'm going to decorate each of the green blocks. So the top and the bottom, again, they measure 1 7/8 wide by 1.5 tall. And then the middle block that I just glued down, that's 1 7/8 wide by 1 3/4 of an inch tall. So that looks lovely just as it is. But of course, you can add some more pattern paper to where those white blocks are. And again, the dimensions are going to be the exact same, but you can actually cut these to whatever you really like. It kind of depends on how much of the border of the white card base you want to see. So totally up to you. And of course, everything is really great for scraps, because look at how small each of those blocks is. I mean, this is such a wonderful scrap busting type of card, and it's slightly for that reason that I chose it for MCA, because if you have played MCA before, you kind of know, don't choose your most precious papers. It's best to maybe use some papers that are, not your most favorite, not your most precious, maybe some scraps that you have. And I figured this is a great one because it's got a lot of these little scraps, because what I've listed is quite a few sets of these columns that you could decorate. So it kind of depends on, how all out you want to go with pattern paper versus, do you want to just leave some of the blocks as solid color? And I'll show you, some layouts where I've left some of the blocks without pattern paper, which I actually really like, because sometimes you need that solid block of just color to give your eyes a place to rest a little bit, because otherwise it's so much pattern, right? That's a lot of pattern, even if some of the patterns are pretty simple. But see, once you start opening this, that's a second layout right there. So you can see this is a totally different layout. It's got fresh pattern, it's got fresh, solid color cardstock that hasn't been decorated yet. And that's another opportunity to add more pattern paper, to add more sentiments, to add more ephemera. So you can see how fun this card can be and how fun it would be for the recipient to kind of discover each of the hidden messages, each of the different layouts and panels. And in total, there's going to be essentially 4 different configurations. And you don't necessarily have to decorate them all if you don't want to. Kind of just depends on, how much you think the recipient will noodle on it and play with it until they've figured it out, because this is the kind of card that's a little bit like a puzzle, right? There's a little bit of mystery to it, there's a fun interaction to it, but it does take a little bit of curiosity from the recipient to figure it all out. So if you flip to the back now, this is sort of configuration number 3, because you can see there's fresh cardstock there that hasn't been decorated. And then if you open this up from the back, there's another layout. So there's 2 more layouts right there that you can decorate. Now, what I discovered is that if you are decorating with ephemera or stamped images, when you are gluing things onto these columns, you really do need to stick to the confines of each of those blocks. You really can't have anything extend above or below if you want the full capabilities of opening this and seeing all 4 different layouts and configurations. And I'm going to go all out with this one. I'm going to decorate the other side as well, because remember, this is basically, if you started with your gatefold, this would be flipping to the back of that and opening everything in the same way as you would open if you were opening it from the front. And so I'm going to do the same thing, just taking some pattern papers. And like I mentioned earlier, kind of like, covering some of the solid, but leaving some solid pieces so that your eyes have a little bit of a resting spot. And so now I'm kind of cutting down scraps and just trying to get the most out of the papers that I've already cut into, rather than cut into fresh new sheets of pattern paper. Because like I said, this is a really good scrap buster. It's really great for when you have a bunch of those 2-inch strips, for example, because remember, each of these blocks is 1 7/8 wide. So if you find yourself left over with a lot of 2-inch strips, and saying that, I'm reminded of the of the Squash Book mini album. I made so many of those for the Not Too Shabby Enjoy This Life virtual retreat, so I have a ton of those 2-inch strips left, and this would be great for that. So I decorated some of those panels, but I didn't really put a ton on. I wanted to make sure that my belly band still fits, because I've got a lot of papers here. I've got a lot of layers of cardstock. But look how fun this is. And it's so fun to just kind of play with this, figure out all these different configurations, and then you have so many different spots to add some hidden messages, sign your card, add some ephemera. So here's a final look. You open this up, and you can open it just like you would a gatefold. And then what you want to do is, in order to reveal sort of the, say that's layout number 1, layout number 2 would be fold all of this down and then split it from the center. And here I just did some stamping and some embossing onto the solid panels. And then you want to close this back up, open it, flip it to the back, and then you're going to reverse your folds. So fold this back like a gatefold, and then fold that in half, and then split it from the center. and that reveals another. This is configuration number 3, and or that would be 4, and that would be 3 right there. So that's 3, that's 4. And then if you open it all the way back up and you flip it to the opposite side, that's sort of the original. And look how fun. So cool. This is like the card that is like a nice little fun puzzle to figure out. So I hope that you enjoyed World Card Making Day. I hope you enjoyed this card. If you are interested, check out Sam Calcott's channel. She has dies, as I mentioned, that cut all of that for you so that you can have all the mats and layers. And those are 5x7 and 6x6. So I'll probably craft with those in another video because I have both of those die sets. Thanks for joining me on this one. And until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.